Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 9 of Codebase Alpha. Before I forget, I think we'll have a little bit of relaxed daily in the background. Tell me if this music's a bit too loud or not, and hopefully it won't be. So I think we need this after the troubles I had last time. The last 3/4 of an hour of episode 8, we were struggling with cryptography. And I'll just go back to that part of the code. And the reason why I struggled so much was that I was thinking in .NET Framework mode, and we're in .NET Core, and things are just slightly different. Enough difference really that it can throw you, but actually it's better. So let's just pop down to the area of the code where I was struggling last time. And it was when we were trying to do a cast, and it was in this area here when we were getting the public key out of the certificate. And as you can see, the actual solution to that is there's actually a method on the certificate called getRSAPublicKey, which means you don't need to do the cast to an RSA crypto service provider. So we kind of got round the problem by using this. I did a little bit of refactoring on it, just a tiny amount, and I've actually used put a using statement on that, getting the public key. So we actually don't need this statement here at all. So I'll get rid of that. The rest of it is pretty much the same as it was. I think Rambling Geek did mention last time that there was a magic string in here, and that's now been replaced with the hashing algorithm name SHA-1. So let's get rid of that as well. So this verify hash is slightly different in that it has this enum here, and also another enum which is the signature padding. And I'll be honest with you, evening Gareth, evening Rambling Geek, welcome to the stream. I'll be honest with you, with this RSA signature key padding, I didn't know which one. There's a couple of options in there, so I actually tried both of them, and this PKSS1 is the correct one. So we can just verify that everything's working fine. I'll get our Echo here. Let's bring it over. Alexa, ask live coding, who's streaming now?
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
There we go. So we've got a response coming back. So what I'd like to do initially in the stream is to do some refactoring, because there's a couple of issues we've got. This class, the middleware class here, has got a lot of if statements in it, which have got quite complicated conditions in there, which I want to kind of extract out into their own little methods to make it more readable. The other problem is quite evident if we actually run the tests. So if I run our little test suite, we'll see that the first test actually fails, and we can't make it in its current form ever pass. So let's have a look. So you can see that we've got our first test that's failing, and that's actually a positive test. That is, everything's correct, and it's saying that it doesn't fail, and of course it does, because, well, I'll show you why it does a bit later on. But basically we're testing for a response code of 400, and that's not really a very good test, because there are many reasons for returning a bad request, status code 400, and it just happens that what we're testing here is the presence or absence of the signature headers, and they're there, but it just fails for something else a bit later on. We're not passing everything in that we need, so we need to kind of have a bit of a think about what we do with that, and I've got some ideas what we can do. The other thing that we had missing from our validation was to do with the certificate again, and that was this one, which is a requirement that all the certificates in the chain combine to create a chain of trust to a trusted root certificate authority certificate. So I've done some research on that, and I've got a very simple solution to it. Rambling Geek, what you don't understand about testing code, you're writing code to test code. What if the test is incorrect? Absolutely. So we've got we've got a situation here where we wrote tests, and they were very useful tests while we were developing the middleware method. But unfortunately, we cut to a certain point where the testing, we can't really test the encoding of the body by the certificate, and so everything after a certain point, which is in fact at this point that's highlighted on this try method here, this try statement, everything inside that try catch we can't actually test very well. So I may give it some thought to think how we can try to test it, but basically what we're doing is downloading a certificate, making sure it's valid, and then we're actually extracting the body from the HTTP request, which is encoded and hashed, and then we're hashing that body and comparing it with what's produced by the certificate. So it's so this concept of involving the test that Gareth has mentioned in chat there is really important, because we can't know everything when we start the test. So this is, I guess, the evidence of test. The essence of test-driven development is you kind of start writing tests, and then the tests evolve as you go through. Now, we're not doing DD here, but we are trying to get the tests in as early as possible to try and validate what we're doing, and also to help us actually debug. And that's what these tests helped us do last time. So there was just go through and find out when there were issues, and that's how we managed to find there was an issue with that cast, because the actual code looked fine. It compiled fine. There was no red squigglies. It just, when it hit it, it says that it was an invalid cast. Even though when we hovered over the there was a property accessor which is public key.key. When we hovered over the .key, it did say it could do the cast, but in reality it couldn't. And I think some of that may be to do with it being on a .NET Core, and maybe the messaging hasn't changed. But so it's really important that you do have some tests to help you figure out that kind of thing. Anyway, we've got this working now. So adding overhead, was that overhead in time? Yeah, less than fine squashing bugs. Yes. So sometimes, Rambling Geek, it's very difficult to do the debugging in a kind of an integration test scenario. What we want to do is try to do some unit tests to isolate the thing we're testing, the system under test, and pass in controlled information to it. So we're saying this is what we're passing in. You go and mash that up in your process and come out the result, and let's make sure the result is what we expected. So yeah, sometimes it does seem you're writing the test and telling it what's good, and then expecting it to be good, and that's correct. That's exactly what you are doing, but you are testing the process that's going on, so that if for example you get a piece of logic wrong, you get a greater than sign the wrong way around, so it's a less than sign, then you'll find that a lot easier than you would having to kind of do integration testing or even live testing, heaven forbid, and then scratching your head and working your way through. And then also with this situation, it's very much more difficult for us to do live debugging, really, because we're pushing all our code up into Azure, and we're having to look at logs to try and find error messages, which is fine. It's the old-fashioned way of debugging. Good evening, Cody Bird. Welcome to the stream. Good to see you. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do to start with is actually sort out this to-do. So I did a bit of kind of searching on the internet, and this turns out to be relatively simple. So what we need to do is actually create a new certificate chain, and then try and build that chain from our certificate. And if the build succeeds, it means it kind of looped all the way back to a trusted CA, and we're good to go. And if it fails, that build, it means that chain of trust couldn't be built all the way back to a trusted root certificate authority. Okay, so let's so we need to just quickly create a variable. So we'll call it certificate chain. Certificate chain. Typing doesn't improve, and that's going to be a new X509 chain. Oops. Okay, and then what we can do is set some properties on that. So we'll use a property initializer. So when you have a certificate chain, some of the certificates in that chain might have been revoked, but we don't actually want to check online. We just want to ignore that check, really. So we have a thing called a chain policy, and that's an object, and that is going to have a revocation mode of not check. So no check. There we go. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So that is basically set up the chain that we're going to try and build from the certificate, and then we can have a quick variable here, which has chain to trusted CA, and what we do here is we take the certificate chain, so certificate chain, and we run the build method on that, and you notice that actually just show you that actually I've misspelt chain, so let's just correct the spellings. Let's not have what we had last time and have misspellings in our code. If I just hit dot there, you see we've got these stars against some of the methods. I've actually installed IntelliCode on here, and I've run IntelliCode against our code base, and it's actually suggesting the most commonly used methods in this position for this particular object. So build is right at the top of this, which is good, and we basically put our certificate into that. And you can see, actually, if we just delete that again, you can see even here, as I start to type, certificate is starred on that list, so it knows it's waiting for an X509 certificate to type. Okay, so we got that, and we can do our test if it doesn't have a certificate, a chain to a trusted CA. Then we can do our normal logging of an error and then returning the bad request, and we'll come back and refactor all this because there's an awful lot of code which is exactly the same. So this is the invalid certificate chain. Certificate chain was invalid. Okay, but what I want to do first is what we usually do. We want to test that, make sure that we haven't broke anything by adding that piece of code. So keep your fingers crossed. Let's publish to Azure. So we right click and publish. And remember, what happens usually is that it takes a couple of goes for the echo, the echo to actually respond correctly. So you won't panic immediately if it fails first time. So Rambling Geek, it is double the labour, but actually it halves the labour in the end. As Coded Bird suggests, it's not. You can go overboard with unit tests, and you can test everything. Testing property setters and getters, if they're simple property setters and getters, is pointless because they're going to work. You want to be testing your branching logic, really, and where you're doing any kind of complex processing. Places where it's likely to fail, you should have an intuitive feeling, really, of where that looks like it could fail there. So where you're doing tests, where you're doing if statements, that's a good place to do that. Also, if you're trying to work out some logics. Now, I think I was watching Jeff Fritz's stream. Was it? I It was this weekend, I think, and he was struggling with a link statement. And I think if you had some test data and a test, and you had your expected result, you can actually kind of help you build up that link statement in a more straightforward way than just kind of hitting the dot and seeing what methods are there and just trying to build it up almost in a not a random way, but in a bit more haphazard way. So you can start to see what the values are, and you can interrogate obviously the variables and see what's coming through. So we've published that. So let's give it a go. Get the echo. Alexa, ask live coding, who's streaming now? Now you can see that
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
Oh, there we go, it worked. That was impressive. So I did kind of wait a moment there after it had published. So I think it takes a little while for it to actually go through. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is extract out these error messages. So I'm going to start off by just making them into public static strings up on the top of the class here, and then we'll think about whether we want to put them in their own class as a kind of a second phase of doing this this tidy up, this refactor. So let's create some public static strings, and I'll let you know why we're making them static, public static in a bit, because we want to use the same strings in our tests, but we'll come to that in a while. So the first thing we want to extract out is this one, which is the signature headers are missing. So signature headers missing, and we'll just extract out this string here, and then just replace what we write to the log. So we'd log in that, and that's to the that's both to the console and it's logging it to the Azure logs. So if I go over to my program.cs, you can see we've added in the Azure Web App Diagnostics sync to the logging here. Fuel Snable, welcome. Good to see you. Okay. So that's a bit of a diversion. Let's close that down. So that's the signature headers missing kind of error situation. The next one is that the signature certificate chain URL was null. So let's create one for that. I'm going to close this test window down to give us a bit more screen real estate. Michael Jolly, welcome. You're in alert mode. Okay, that's no problem. I enjoyed your stream the other day. That was really fun. So congratulations. I love it when you took your green screen down. So I've got an idea of how big those green screens are. I do want to get one from behind me because we don't look like we're on a code base in the middle of deep space with that ironing board in the background, do we? So we want to kind of give the impression that we're floating in the code here, and then on my just chatting stream I want to have a suitable kind of sci-fi backdrop, but that's all to come. I'm going quite slowly with purchasing stuff really. The big purchase was the computer, which cost me a lot of money and a lot of heartache with Amazon. So yeah, so I'm just kind of building up the equipment. Yes, it was a very long stream. I had to drop out after, was it perhaps an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours, and I looked a bit later on and Mike was still going. So well done on that, epic stream. Okay, so let's just crack on with these. So signature chain URL empty. we'll go and grab the error message that we were using, which is this one here. And we'll just replace it with the static. Okay, so the next one is we're not using HTTPS. So public static string again. Must use HTTPS. And you'll see why we're going down this route shortly. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get so that our tests actually are testing something valid rather than just testing the return of a bad request. We need to know why it returned a bad request, and we're going to use these long messages to let us know that and make our tests actually valid. Okay, so replace that. The next one is this one here. So certificate has invalid host name. So public static string invalid host name. Oh, thank you very much, Mike. So 202. So that's wonderful. So we've got loads of people kind of all tied on 202 bitties. Thank you very much for those bitties. So rambling, why did I have to buy a new PC? Okay, there's a story there. So I started streaming my test streams. I did 2 episode 0 test streams on a laptop which I've got upstairs. And basically I hit 100% CPU straight away. And it struggled mightily. So I moved down to my PC, my tower PC downstairs, which is a very, very old and underpowered machine, and it really struggled. It was better because it did have a graphics card in it, but not a very good graphics card. So I actually happened to have had a bonus come through from work, and I managed to persuade my wife that we need a new computer. It was actually very, very slow, remarkably slow. And I think I since found out why it's slow. But so I managed to get. So I ordered I got agreement from the accountant that I could purchase a new PC, and I ordered it from Amazon. And it was I paid extra, so it would come in the morning in a 3-hour time slot. And I took a long weekend from work, so I took a Friday off and a Monday off from work, so that PC could arrive and I could set it up and be ready. And it didn't turn up, and I had a real game with Amazon, who lost it in between their warehouse and putting it on their lorry, and they seemed to believe it was my fault, and I couldn't get any sense out of them. And then they refused to put another one on the lorry and send it to me. They said it can't possibly do that, it's impossible, which made me chuckle. And I actually wrote to their head of their head of customer services, and I remarked that if Jeff Bezos had the same definition of what's impossible, then his Blue Origin rockets wouldn't be going anywhere, would they? So, but I didn't get anywhere anyway. I eventually got a refund. I had to wait 7 days for a refund. In the meantime, I went to PC World and bought a much more powerful computer. So yes, Rambling Geek, I do code for a living. I'm a development manager. I work in Birmingham in the UK for a large non-for-profit company, and I have a lot of fun doing that. But I'm not just a manager. I'm very much a hands-on manager. So I actually couldn't see myself not coding. So probably about 70% of my job is actually writing code, or thinking about code, or designing solutions. I work a lot with Dynamics 365, so I do a lot of coding for that, a lot of customization. and the rest of it's management stuff, which is, you know, it's the typical kind of management things you have to do. So, you know, it's one-to-ones with your staff. It's doing appraisals. We have appraisals twice a year, and that kind of thing. Looking after sickness reports and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's the work. That's the bad part of it. But I've got a great team. So there's 7 of us in the team. Yeah, CRM. Dynamics 365 CRM. So yeah, the management stuff. A lot of people don't get on with it. My lead developer was in my position before I joined the company, but he kind of bailed out after a couple of months because he didn't like the management side of it. I don't mind it. I've done everything. You know, I've done compromise agreements. I've done disciplinary investigations. I've had to sack people. You know, it's just, and they're horrible things to have to do, but it's just like part of being a manager. And you also get the rewards when you can give people promotions and you can recommend people for rewards, and you see people grow really. So yeah, it's got ups and downs. But I say the main thing is that that it's, you know, a lot of it is actually coding, and I do get to work from home quite a lot. Not every day, but don't mess with S&B or sack you. Well, you know, I've only in terms of sacking people, I've done that once, and that was a person on probation. So that's not too bad because, you know, you're trying them out, they're trying you out, so they can leave within a week's notice, and you can ask them to leave at a week's notice. There's also more difficult things to do with when you get complaints about people, and you have to kind of approach that person and bring up that the complaint with them and try and kind of get a resolution. So yeah, working from home is great. I've actually got an office now. I used to work on the kitchen table, so I've got myself an office upstairs, but I can't use that to stream from. So that's why I'm down in the command center that's currently cunningly disguised as someone's living room. But that's because we don't want to reveal all the high tech we've got here at the code base. So okay, let's crack on with this. So what were we looking at there? We were looking at invalid host name. Oh no, we've done invalid host name, and we need to grab invalid host name, don't we, and bring that down. Yeah, management isn't fun sometimes, but you know, honestly, it can be rewarding in its own right. So if you do get the chance to do some kind of team leadership, team mentoring, that kind of thing, then that's a good thing to do. You know, don't shy away from taking some responsibility for people under you. Whether you want to become a full-time manager is another matter, but you know, I'm sure that all of us as developers will try to bring on junior developers, also embrace their ideas and make it clear that you're an inclusive person, and the ideas of the most junior dev, you know, are worth listening to, and sometimes they come up with great stuff. So yeah. Yeah, it's 5 of you in the entire company. Now I've worked for a startup. It was a UK startup of a Canadian firm, and that was a hell of a lot of fun. But it was hard work. I think to start off with us, there was 6 of us in a Regus office. Regus, in case you don't know, is one of these kind of hire and office companies. Just a small, not a startup, Gareth. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I've worked for small companies. I worked for large companies. I worked for British Telecom for 14 years. That's a place where you don't want to be a manager. if you ever get the opportunity to work for BT, don't be a manager. I'm not going to go into the story behind that, but I didn't have an enjoyable time being a manager at BT. Okay, so where are we? We've now got invalid path. So in invalid certificate path, bring that down. Okay. So there's not too many of these, so we shouldn't have to spend too long doing this. So you just got a message there from Nightbot. If you're not following me on Twitter at Codebase Alpha for the latest news on streams, so it may well be that although I've got a schedule of Monday and Wednesday, that bonus streams could well come along, and also I do tweet some space stuff if you're interested in the space stuff. Also obviously the Discord. I think everyone in chat is on the Discord. I don't know. That's Defense of the Ancients, is it too? I don't know that. So yeah. Fuel Snowball. I don't know the game. I know it's one of these esports games, and notoriously difficult, isn't it? So yeah, and as Nightbot has just said, then if you want to find all our code, it's up on GitHub at github.com/snb. So what have we got here? Certificate not yet effective. Oh, that's interesting. We'll do something down here, I think, because we're faffing around with a try pass and we don't have to do any of that. So let's just sort out the messages. Certificate not yet effective. So public static string certificate not yet effective. So that equals that. We got an equivalent one which is expired, I think, wasn't it? We'll just certificate expired. Certificate has expired. So let's just bring these two down. That's that one there, and there, and this one here. Okay, what we can do with these dates, if I just pop over to the interweb, we go over here, this shows us the validation requirements that we're working to. So where we're validating the signature, we've downloaded the certificate, and we need to make sure it's this line here. The signing certificate has not expired. Examine both the not before and the not after dates. Now, I took out the expiry date and the effective date, but actually there are properties on there which are date times called not before and not after. So let's use those because it's going to be better than us trying doing the try pass stuff that's going on here. So, so what we can do is replace this with certificate dot not before. So if the not before is greater than now, then it's not effective yet, and we can lose some of this stuff up here. So this line can go. So deleting code, great stuff. And here we can say certificate not after. So it's not after. So we make sure that it's so is that right? So I'm always get confused in my mind with these dates. So the not after date, yes, is before now. Okay, that's correct. So we can get rid of this piece of code here. So that tidies us up a bit. A couple of lines of code missing. Okay, so we've got invalid issuer. So another public static. Certificate invalid issuer. Let's pop that string in there. We'll copy that down. So this is a bit tedious, but so we will reap the benefit in a short while. Okay, that's the invalid issuer, and then we've got invalid certificate chain, so let's grab that. We do want to refactor some of these tests, these if statements up, so it's a bit easier to read, it flows a bit. So public static string invalid certificate chain. So got that, and we're nearly at the end now. Put that in there. Okay, and then we've got an invalid key. So let's grab that. So the final one, invalid certificate key. That's that. Okay. And we'll pop that in there. Okay. So we've got our error messages, or our information messages, whatever you want to call them, extracted out into statics, and we can now use those across in our tests. So let's go and have a look at one of the tests. Look at the test that's not working properly. So it's this first one. So in here we're passing in the two headers that we require, so a signature and a signature certificate chain URL, and this is a correct chain URL. So this is one that we discovered last time through our testing. We managed to extract that out of the information from the test, and we come down here and we assert that we don't have a status code 400 in our response, and of course we do, because as we go along we do successfully get past this test for the headers, but then we hit something else which falls over. So we probably go all the way down here, and then we find that we haven't put a body in, and so this hashing of the body and comparing it just doesn't work. So we bomb out with a 400. So what we need to do is to try and fix this up a bit. So what I thought we could do is, rather than asserting that we get a 400 error back, we don't get a 400 error back, rather, is that we don't get the error message we expect to be produced by this test. So if this test was return a bad request if headers are missing, which is what this one is, then what we expect to get is a 400 error, and we expect the logger here to actually write out this message: signature head is missing. So let's actually tackle the negative test case, so with the return bad request if headers not present. Let's get that working, and then we can use the same logic up here in the positive test, where we're saying actually we're going to provide you the headers, so you shouldn't fall over with that particular error message. Now, one of the troubles we have using Fake It Easy, and I'm not sure if other, I'm just going to have a glug of wine here, I'm not sure if other mocking frameworks have the same problem, is actually that Fake It Easy won't let you test on statics. And if we pop back over to the middleware here, this logger.log error, this is an extension method, and as you'll all know, extension methods are statics, so we can't actually do an awful lot with log error. Yes, it's a common limitation, isn't it, Pure Snowball? And I think some of the frameworks do allow you to work with them, but Fake It Easy doesn't. For better or worse, I chose Fake It Easy. So Fake It Easy is our mocking framework, Rambling Geek. So what we're doing here, if we just go through we're using the arrange, act, assert pattern for tests. Here we're setting up a fake request. So the syntax for that is fake. We got a variable called fake request is a new fake of type HTTP request. So that's now basically a fake HTTP request. We've got a fake logger and a fake HTTP context. And what we can do then is we can start defining what happens when we make calls on those faked objects. So here, for a fake request, when we make a call to the scheme property, we're saying we want you to return HTTPS. So we're kind of setting up what the request we're testing with is going to look like. And here we've set up some headers, and when we do a call to the headers property, we're going to return those headers. Okay. So we know they're good. This one we know it's bad because the signature chain cert URL isn't in the headers. So we know this one's going to fail. So we've kind of set ourselves up to fail. We know this should fail, and now the test is going to say, if I throw this into your middleware, are you going to fail? And are you going to fail with the right error message? So this next part requires a bit of thought because, as I say, we can't do this. We can't test on the static. We've got to test on what the static is actually using under the covers. So let's have a quick look at that. So it's iLogger, and it's the log method. iLogger log. So this is actually what we're calling under the covers. So our extension method is a nice neat wrapper which is protecting us from having to think about a lot of this stuff. So as you can see, the parameters that it's got a log level, an event ID, a type of tstate, an exception, and then a func that's going into it. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameters that are actually being created, and the func is just a formatter. This state is what we're interested in. This is the entry that's going to be written to the log. So it's a string normally, but it can be an object. You can write an object to the log as well. But in our case, it's a string because we're feeding a string in. Okay, so this parameter is what's important. So what we want to be able to do is run our test and then assert that the log method was called on our fake logger, and that the state parameter contained the error message we expect. In this case, it's the missing signature headers message. Okay, so to do an assertion like that, we're going to leave the assertion that we get a 400 error back, because we should get one of those. We're going to have to write a fake it easy assertion to say that this call to the log happened and that the error message was what we expected to be, the signature headers missing message. Okay, so it's a bit complicated, so I'll just go through the syntax. So we're going to test that there was a call to, and we're looking at the fake logger, which is this here, and the faked object on that logger. Now the next part, we're going to have to sort through all of the methods that could be called and the parameters on that method. So we can do a bit of link now. So we got a where, and we'll have just any old letter there, C for call, I don't know. So we want the method, the name of the method, to be log. So that's the first part of our test. So it's going to have to have called log. So if we can put on the end here, we can say must have happened. Okay, so it's going to say that unless that a call to log happened, this will fail. Okay, Ancient Coder, welcome to the stream. Good to see you. Good to see you indeed. Okay, so we're testing here that that the log method on the iLogger, the fake logger we're sending in, actually happened. But that's not kind of sufficient to because it's going to be called every time we throw a 400 bad request, we log some information. So what we need to do is check that the parameter that was passed into the log method is what we expect. So if we put an AND on that. Now what we need to do is get the argument. So and C dot. So one of the things we can do here is get an argument. String argument. And that's not quite right. I think we want to cast it to a string. Now I happen to know that that logger takes some formatted values. These formatted log values. Okay, so that's the set of arguments that are going into it. So if we go back to the parameters here, you can see this is parameter 0, this is parameter 1, this is parameter 2. So we want this state parameter, parameter number 2, which is the entry to be written to the logs. Okay, so in the brackets here we have to say which one we want. Let's just bring in formatted log values. That's on the internals to the logging extension, as you can see there. So we want the second one, and then we want to say what do we want to say? We want the value of that. So we want the first of those. Oops. And we want the value, and the value has got to be equal to now it's going to be, we're going to use our static that we created in the validation middleware. So Alexa request validation dot, and it was signature headers missing, wasn't it? So let's do a bit of tidying up here because he's getting a bit messy. So let's just bring in link so we can have the first and equals we're missing it. Okay. First dot value. What's it saying? It's a boolean at the moment. Must have happened. I've got too many of those. Where are we? First dot value equals. Oh, she's getting the statement's getting so complicated, isn't it? Let's try and split it up a bit more. So equal to where that and that. So we're getting the get argument, formatted log values, and we're in the second one of those. We want the first instance off that because that's a collection. We want the value. I'm sure that looks okay. Okay. There we go. Okay, happy now. Okay, so that's the test we're going to run. So just to go through it again, we're going to assert on this test that that it does throw a 400, that the method on the fake logger called log is going to be invoked, and that the second argument in the log format, the formatted log values that we passed into there, is going to be our error message, which is signature headers missing. Let's just run that. And that should pass, unless we've got an error in that logic. Okay, so that's run. So you can see we've got our failing test. This is what we're trying to fix now. So if I copy this statement here and move up to the assertions up here, now we can't. We're going to assert we can't assert that a 400 is not thrown because we know it's going to be thrown even if we succeed in this particular test, which is only testing for the bad request headers. So I'm going to just replace that with this call to, and I'm going to, instead of must have happened, we're going to say must not have happened. So the test is now going to pass. Must not have happened. The test is now going to pass if we don't bomb out with a missing header error message. So let's now run that. And we keep our fingers crossed that we're going to get a pass. And we do. And that's worth a round of applause and a glass of wine. So that's probably one of the most complicated parts of that code is to do that. They are quite brittle. There's not an awful lot we can do about it because other than throwing different types of HTTP errors, I can't test. What I'd like to say is leave it say it doesn't throw an error if you supply the request headers, but you can't do that because we can't test the whole of the validation chain. We can't get past the testing of the certificate where we do the body stuff. So now what I will do is to investigate a bit more at how we can pass in a fake body, and I'm sure we can do that. But the problem is we have no control over what certificate is used, so Amazon may change the certificate, and we're actually downloading a real certificate. So this isn't, in many ways, we're not doing unit testing. We really should be feeding in the certificate. We should control that part as well, but that's a bit beyond the scope of what I want to try and attempt on the stream. I don't really. Well, it would involve faking the whole of the certificate, and I'm not sure even how to start doing that. So it's a better test than it was, but it passes now because it was never going to actually never going to pass before. Okay, so I'll just check my notes. What else did we want to cover here? Oh yes, we wanted to have a look at these other tests, these tests of the certificate, not the certificate path. So this is where we're testing this certificate chain URL. So if we go over to Amazon, it actually provides us with a set of bad URLs. Yes, I do have notes, Gareth. They're just rough. I try to not jot down a running order and some kind of things I want to make sure I try and cover. Usually I don't follow it, but I do try to make some rough notes about the kind of topics I want to cover in the stream. It's I don't know, it's just because that's the way I organise myself. Your stream is very much for free throwing, and it's great. I mean, that's the way you work. I need at least a little bit of structure around it, around the stream, in order to make sure that I don't. I mean, I still go off on tangents, and when we get stuck, like we did last week, then it all goes out the window. But at least I know that I want to cover this part and doing theory in XUnit. So I've not really used XUnit before, so this is the first time I've actually used it, which is quite daring for me to come on stream and use something I've never used before. But yeah. Oh, you've got an idea what you want to cover tomorrow? Yeah, you've got a plan. Yes, it's good to have a plan. I mean, oftentimes, as I say, it doesn't come to fruition, but yeah, have a plan. Okay, so what we can do is actually get rid of a lot of this stuff. All of this is all about testing this chain URL. So let's sort out one of them. We'll choose this one here. Okay. And we'll turn this into a theory. What we want to do is we're going to pass in these as a 5. 1, 2, 6. There's 5 invalid URLs. We're going to pass those in, and we're going to make sure we don't fail with one of the messages. Message box processors copying up tomorrow in your stream. That'll be interesting, Gareth. I must admit they went right over my head, so it'd be interesting to look at them again. I managed to write my F# Slack library, I believe, without using a mailbox processor. I couldn't figure it out at the time, so I kind of pared it down to a simpler process. But I can see how the mailbox processing is very valuable and useful, but I just don't understand it. Yeah, you want to try and avoid them if you can. Well, I don't know. They seem quite elegant, an elegant idea, and once you kind of grasp it, I suppose it's the way to go, isn't it? A queue in a thread for your Snowball, yeah. It's a way of kind of hiving it off and have the processing kind of almost automated, isn't it? Really. So we get something's taking care of that processing for you on a different thread. Yeah. Okay, so let's just grab some of these invalid URLs. So what we do with a theory, we have inline data, and that is, we put the data in like that. Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. And then we have to pass in into our method the invalid URL. Okay. So what I'm going to do is going to copy these. So we need 4 more of these. So this is going to basically test 5 URLs in one test. So we get rid of a lot of repetition. Okay, I'm just going to copy over now the other invalid URLs. So there's this one, which is an invalid host name. And then we've got an invalid path. Goes in there. An invalid, another invalid path. In the 4th one. And then an invalid port. So we might as well test with the data which is being given to us by Amazon rather than making our own test data up. because I assume these are the tests that they're going to do when they do our validation. Okay, so that there, and the signature chain then is going to be, rather than a fixed value, it's going to be the invalid URL. Goes in there. Okay, so so now we can get rid of actually these other ones, because these are just testing various invalid URLs. Okay, and what we need to do is to have a similar call here. Okay, so this is going to get even more horrible and fragile. But I think it's worth having these kinds of tests, even though, as Gareth rightly points out, they're not exactly the most elegant thing in the world. It's worth having some kind of tests which at least targeted on the error messages that's been produced, and we've kind of fixed those. We're using the static variables, so that if we change the actual message in statics, we can our test will still pass. Okay. So we want. So what were the various values we wanted? So must use HTTPS, invalid host name, invalid certificate path. Okay. Yeah, that's what we want. So that would be must use HTTPS. Now, don't cringe. This is going to look horrible, but that needs must. So we want to just enclose those in possibly needless brackets, but we'll do it anyway. Now we're just going to test the argument again. So we don't want it to be. Oops. No, that's not what I wanted. I wanted it there, and it was invalid. Invalid certificate path, wasn't it? Or invalid certificate host name. Okay. So am I proud of those tests? Kind of, because I think that the use of the of grabbing in and finding out what the parameter was is quite good. I quite like that. But yeah, we could do with a better way of doing this. But so Gareth, it's not too brittle and breaks too often for the wrong reasons. Yeah, I think it's valuable. Ideal, it's not ideal. So let's run that. See what happens there. We get a pass. So we've managed to test now as far down as testing the format of the certificate chain URL, and then what we do then is we then go and actually get the certificate and we start playing with it. So we may do a bit more testing later on. I think I'm going to stop with the testing there and just do something else, just for some variety. Of course, I'm going to have some wine. Okay. So in here, I think we might want to extract these out into their own class at some point. These messages, because there are other messages around which we could do. Time for a tea. Yeah, why not? Feel free to go for to get some coffee. What I'll do is I'll have a 2-minute break, and I'll catch you up on the other side, and while you go and make your coffees and teas and whatever, and I'll see you just in a few minutes. Well, I'm back if you're not. So what I've just done while we're off stream, I just tidied up the names of some of these tests. So I changed the first test to not log signature heading missing if headers present, and I changed the third test to be return bad request if not if certificate URL not formatted correctly. So that's just tidied up those names so that it reads correctly. So following the dev chatter way of writing the tests, we read it: Alexa request validation should not log signature headers missing if headers present. So that's why we got these rather long names. And sometimes, oh excuse me, we might put some underscores in these names, but I often find those underscores a bit jarring in method names. So you can do that, it's not a problem. Sometimes you might want to separate kind of clauses within the method name by an underscore, but not really need to here. Okay, so let's close down the test window for now. Let's go across to our response builder. And now, in fact, that's one thing that I do need to do is to look at now it's a session ended request. So if we go and have a look on the documentation for the session ended request, let's go here. Alexa skill session ended.
Skills can help you do lots of things like play a game, order a ride, work out, and much more. You can find thousands of skills in your Alexa app or just by asking what are your top skills. Here are a few skills to get you started. Do you want to try Smooth Radio?
No, thank you, Alexa. Yes.
Want to give ambient sound, ocean sounds a try?
No, thank you, Alexa. So yes, the double backtick syntax is something that should bring across from F# into the C# world. It is very good. You can write whole sentences and things like that. It's English kind of sentences. It's very good. Yes.
Would you like ambient sound, ocean sound?
Alexa, stop. Yeah, I've got to learn not to say the A word while it's sitting on the desk here. So that's why I'm going to call it the Echo, and we'll try and avoid setting it off. Yes, spell out its name. Yes. Okay, so request type reference. Let's go and have a look at that. So this is the session ended request. We did a bit of work on this last time, but one thing I noticed is there's actually an error type here, which we haven't got on ours. We've got reason only. We haven't got the error part of it. So let's get that on, and then we can log the error if we get one. And that'll be useful as we continue with the testing. When we're testing actually with the Echo, if we get these responses where it says, you know, I didn't understand what you said, or I'm not working right now, we can go and have a look about what gets logged for that, and try and work out if it's something we've done wrong, or if it's just that that we need to wait a while for the service to spin up. Okay. So I don't believe we've got an error type at the moment. No, we haven't created one, so let's create an error. So error. That's a public class. What we want on there is public string. Let's quickly pop back. It's a type and a message. So a type. Get and set that, and then there was an error message. Error message. And we'll just take those as strings. And we need to now decorate these properties with our JSON properties. So JSON property. Now we need to bring in the using statement for the Newtonsoft.json package. So this is the type property, and the second one was the message. So we got that. Now in here we can have public error. Get set that, and we can put our JSON property on that, and it was the error property. Okay, so now we've got that coming in. If we go across to our controller, so when we encounter the session ended request coming through from the software which runs the Echo, then we're going to hit this handler, and currently we just return null. But what I'd like to do is if next request starts so we need to convert it. We need to do something like this, don't we? So var session ended request is going to be the Alexa request.body and we're going to cast that as a session ended request, and then we can say session ended request dot error it's not null, and then we're going to should have a logger. Yeah, we've got a logger. Got log error, and do a bit of string interpolation, and we'll say let's just pull out bar error as that. So this will be error dot error type, and then error dot error message. Error message. Okay, so now we've got that. Oops, forgot the end of the quotes. There we go. Okay, so we're now going to log that error if there is one attached to that. A don't listen to me button on the echo. Is there a don't? Oh, yes, there's a don't listen to me button, isn't there? I can see it from here. That's a good idea. What I'll do then, of course, is I'll forget to press it, and we'll be saying, "Oh, it's not working." Never mind. I'll struggle on with it as it is. One of the things I did want to do is play around with attaching the aux out and trying to get so that you can hear it a bit better rather than me having to hold the echo up to the microphone. So we'll try that at some point. It lights up when you poke the button, does it? Let's have a look. So it does. Oh, excellent! Oh, wonderful! Thank you, Gareth. That's a good. Oh, so I know it's set up. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So I can say Alexa to my heart's content. Alexa, Alexa, Alexa. There we go. Brilliant. Okay. So we've done that little bit of tidying up. That was on my notes. Yes. So the other thing I wanted to do was over in our controller here. We've got two bits of code that sit right at the start, where we are doing some validation that the application ID that's coming in on the request is the same as the one we've just grabbed out of Azure Key Vault, which is the ID, application ID of our skill. So we make sure that the request is intended for us. And also we've got this replay attack defense here, where we're saying that the time difference between the timestamp on the request and the current time cannot vary by more than 150 seconds. So it's a bit unfortunate we've got that code sitting inside our controller. It would be nice to extract that and into our middleware, into our library, and then just have a simpler piece of code we can tell our users, the consumers of our library, to use. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this, these two if statements here, and on our request object, now Alexa request, going to add a static method to our class. So this will be public static again, and we'll call it we'll return a bool, and we'll call it should process request. And what we're going to have passed in is a string as an application ID, application ID and the request, a string, and the Alexa request. Okay, so we get that passed in, and then we're going to paste that code in and return true as a default, and in this case we're going to return false, and we're not going to log, and here we're going to return false. We're not going to write that log. We'll just use the same name there. So now we've got that, and that's going to be application ID, which we're going to pass in. So now we've got a static method on there, and what we can do is go back over to our controller, and we can replace all of this, and we can say if not Alexa request dot should process, and we're going to pass in our config, and that was skill ID, taking care to spell it correctly this time, and our Alexa request. Okay. Or stamp to timestamp tolerance exceeded. Obviously we can log whatever we want there. So that's pulled out a bit of that logic, so the should process request logic now is actually encapsulated within our library, which is where it should be. And we probably want to go into our library, which was in the Alexa request here, and this 150 we probably want to. No, we'll leave it for the moment. We won't play around with that too much. Okay. So that's tidied that part up a bit. So the idea is we want to try and pull as much as we can into the library, so that people who use the library don't have to think too much about the logic of validating that the request should be processed. So now all we have to tell them to do is include our optional middleware. If you haven't seen that part, apologies if I keep repeating myself, but making sure that if people haven't seen this, what we're doing, what we've done, we've created some custom middleware, and that is now living in our Alexa library here. That's this here, and in our startup class for our web project, our web API, we have conditional use of that middleware. So we have this use when. So people may not have seen use when. The use app.use is kind of ubiquitous; it's everywhere. But app.use when, we can say that when the request path starts with API Alexa, then we're going to include our middleware. And if it doesn't, then we don't. That middleware is not invoked. The request skips that piece of middleware and goes directly to the use MVC. And same way, when it comes back, only if it's if the request started off for the Alexa endpoint, does it once again go through the request validation on the way back. We don't do anything with it on the way back. We just basically pass it through, because if it got as far as the Alexa request validation middleware and failed any of the validations, it would have been bounced back as a bad request anyway. Okay, so that's that. Yes, so we need to look at our response builder next. At the moment, we're doing a very simple thing. We've only got one method where we're responding with some string. So we're saying say this text. In fact, there's two ways of returning information that's going to be spoken by the Alexa device. And if we just pop over to our response object in the library again, if we go to the response body, and it's not going to be the response body, it is it's the I. So in our interfaces, you can see here that the output speech adheres to the iSpeech interface, and the iSpeech interface is defined here. It's actually got no data in it. It's got no methods, but it's defining a type. So it in itself inherits from the iResponse type, and iResponse type does have an attribute. It has a type. So it's a string type. So iSpeech is exactly the same as that, except we've kind of wrapped it now into an iSpeech interface. And if we go and look at text output, you can see that this inherits from iSpeech. It implements the type, but also has an additional property, which is text. Okay, so the other way of outputting speech is through what's called SSML, which is the speech markup language, and this is the definition for that object. So we need to pass it into it a property called SSML. So let's build that now in our response builder. Okay, so basically we can take a lot of the same stuff as this. Now, at some point, what we may want to do is to build up the markup language programmatically, but as it's not really, I don't intend to be using the SSML that much, if at all. But we will test it in a moment. I think at the moment, just for simplicity, at this stage, we're going to just pass that markup language in. It's like an XML language. We're going to pass that in as a string, and worrying about building it up as an XML document a bit later on. Probably not as part of this this project. I want to kind of focus on in the next couple of streams, starting to head towards integrating this into the DevStreams website. What I've done is and I'll show you towards the end of the stream, I've made a fork of DevChatter's repository. Got that working here, and so what we'll be able to do is to we'll make a branch, and we'll kind of a playground branch, and we'll play around getting some of the queries working and learning exactly how that's going to actually operate. Other than that, when we actually come to create the PR, we're going to have to coordinate with Brendan over on DevChatter quite a lot, because there's some new fields I want added to the database to make things a bit more smooth from the voice integration point of view. And also we're going to have to talk about basically sharing the endpoints. He's going to have to publish to Azure. We have to find the endpoints. We're going to have to share the application ID, share the Azure Key Vault, and then go through the certification process with the DevStreams website, which will be up on Azure or wherever it gets published. What we don't want to be doing is trying to certify with this test application that we're building now. What we're really doing here is building the library, and also playing around with the speech output in our Alexa controller. So we're not doing the real thing, but what we're going to be doing in the real application is interrogating the database for the streams that are coming up. Who's streaming now? We're going to have to interrogate Twitch to find out who's actually live at the moment. And also we're going to have to add things like, people might want to know who streams with F# and Fable, or React and .NET Core. So we're going to need to add that kind of query in there, and I think we're going to try and tackle that, interrogating on by the subject of the streams probably next time. We might try a bit of it today if we get that far. I'm never really sure how far we're going to get with these streams, so we'll see. Okay, so here we're going to say with SSML, and instead of creating a new text speech, we're going to create an SSML speech. Okay, and we're going to pass in, rather than text, we're going to pass in the SSML. Okay, and we need to go off to our SSML speech output. So if I go to the text output, you can see we've got a constructor on there. We'll just borrow the constructor and pop it over in here as well. So just do that. Okay. Right. So should we give that a go? I think we should do. So if in our controller over here, we have where is it? We have a launch request, and we're saying here we're just saying welcome DevStream skill. So let's say with SSML. Okay, so what I want to do now is just go over to the Alexa Skills Kit on the Amazon website, and there's an example of some SSML on that, and we can just grab that. So let's go and edit our skill, the test, and we've got voice and tone. So here's some SSML. We'll just grab that. And we'll say we'll see if we can get away with just pasting that in. Replace that with single quotes. Let's just tidy that up a bit. Right. So what should we say here? Let's just replace that. I want to tell you a secret. So let's just have it, see if we can just say that and actually whisper that last part of it. So it should say welcome to DevStream skill and then whisper. I'm not a real human, by the way. So let's see if we can get it to do that. So that should be interesting. So I'm going to switch off the red light on the echo. That's done that, and I'm going to publish up the web app. There we go. I was hoping that Brendan was going to stream this evening, but I don't think he did. There was a bit of confusion about the time. I think Brendan's in daylight saving wherever he is, in Ohio, and he was expecting, I think, to start at 1800 UTC, but his schedule widget on his Twitch page was actually still saying 1900 UTC, so it was a bit confusing. But I don't think he streamed. I did catch some of Brandon Satram's stream, and also a little mini stream by Rambling Geek and Ethan, which was very cute. So we had something to watch while I was preparing for the stream. Okay, let's see what this does for us. Alexa, open live coding.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
So interesting. Let's try again, and then we'll have a logged error. Alexa, open live coding.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
Okay, so we've got a problem. Let's go over to this is really what I wanted to get into. I just wanted to get on and build these methods, but looks like we're going to have to go and find out what's going on. So let's go over to our web app, and we're going to go to our diagnostic logs. They're switched off at the moment, are they? Okay. So let's switch on application logging for file system at the error level. That should be fine for now. We forgot to save. Let's go and put them on again and save. That's it, it's gone blue. We're connecting. Let's see if our piece of work we did just now to add to the session ended request actually works or helps us. Alexa, open live coding.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
Okay, so unfortunately we haven't got an awful lot of help there. It basically said there was unexpected error thrown by the application. Okay. Wonderful. So what could it possibly be? Ah, there we go. So we didn't pass the SSML in. Foolish me. Okay, let's publish that back, and let's hope that was the problem. So I'm thinking, viewers, about future streams. So one of the things I want to do is to give people a tour of the bot. The bot's in chat at the moment. I'll just type in help, which gives you the commands that the bot knows about. Give you a tour of that, and maybe build out some commands, extra commands. So if anyone's got any ideas for commands, or maybe some games we can build into the bot. It's got the text adventure in there, but demonstrating the text adventure on the stream is a bit difficult because it works through whispers on Twitch. It was originally built for Slack, where it used kind of the private message features of Slack. But we can give it a go. And there's an awful lot of work to do on the text adventure, a lot of rooms and caves and features to add to that. So I do want to use the bot as kind of a way of breaking up the content. So we're not doing huge kind of. This is already part 6 of the Alexa work, and we're going to got a few more episodes to do on this. But I do want to kind of break that up with some work on the bot. But how would people feel about me looking at GraphQL? Is that something that would interest people? I know that Mike Jolly expressed an interest in it, and we'll see how far we can get. I'm not sure we can answer all Mike's questions about GraphQL, but it seems like an interesting technology, and it ties in quite nicely with the fact that the first 3 episodes of Codebase Alpha were about a secure API, We've got another API really going on here, and so I thought that might be something which we could have a look at. And it's kind of I don't know, it's a bit of a kind of technology at the moment. It's been around for a few years, but it seems to be coming into its own at the moment. So if anyone has any other ideas what they'd like to look at on the stream, but the idea of the stream, as I've kind of said, is we do want to make it beginner friendly. So we're not going to teach you how to code, but we do want to kind of do things from scratch from the start and not kind of launch into the middle of topics. So I think GraphQL might be. You think it's fun, Gareth? If you've used it at work, building out a test framework, yeah, it might be quite good. Yeah. Okay, let's give this a go and see what happens. So, Alexa, open live coding.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
Okay, so Alexa, open live coding.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
Okay, so did we get anything useful logged? An unhandled exception. Specified argument was out of range of valid values. Okay, wonder what that was then. I don't want to go too deep into this SSML thing, so we'll just have a quick look, and I'll just come back to it another time if we don't get any joy. I don't like leaving things hanging. That's the problem. Okay, so that's our. Okay, there's a space after that. That's probably not very good. Other than that, let's just close that up as well. Well, let's try that. Can anyone see anything with that XML? It should just be a matter of passing that XML in. So it's a bit disappointing that there's a problem, but we'll see. Let's see what goes on. So you've played with GraphQL in a different job, Gareth. So what did you use it for? Don't know what that was about. Okay, we've published. Let's clear the log. Now what I've found is it's best to click off there and click back onto log stream and get the connecting before we. So let's give it one more go and then we'll move on to something else. Alexa, open live coding.
Welcome to the DevStream skill.
Okay, so that seemed to work. Alexa, open live coding.
Welcome to the DevStream skill.
Yeah. So did you hear the whisper? It did whisper, "I'm not a real human," by the way. It didn't sound particularly great because it didn't pause. So there's probably some SSML to control the kind of cadence of the speech. So you used GraphQL because you're aggregating services from a few external APIs and needed to give the client application a uniform API onto your aggregation. Yeah, so that does seem to be one of its strong points, is that you just have a single endpoint, or not even an endpoint at all. You can use middleware to process the GraphQL. Now, when I was talking to Mike Jolly about this on his stream, it must have been last night. Maybe it wasn't last night, maybe it was Saturday. He was saying that kind of querying and updating and that kind of thing isn't all you use APIs for. You also use it to kind of trigger events. So his concern was that that GraphQL was pretty much focused on getting data or updating data in databases, but wasn't necessarily able to handle an event. So you might say his example was he had a job system where you could query jobs and you could create jobs and delete jobs, but you could also pause a job. So basically you're saying you're creating an event pause and unpause, and he wasn't too sure how GraphQL could be used for that. So I don't know if you got any ideas, Gareth, from your experience of GraphQL, whether it was purely used for getting and updating. Okay, so we've got that working, so let's go into there. Okay. Only use it for data, yeah, I thought so. So I don't know if it can be used for what Mike's interested in, but we can find out. And I was interested to see you can do subscriptions where the client can subscribe to updates that happen, so it gets notified when things change. So it sounds interesting to me. The way I want to apply it, I think, is to keep with the space launch theme and have it query a database of space rocket launches and then be used to update those. And also the way I thought we could kind of simulate the event thing is when a launch gets scrubbed or when a launch is successful. But that sounds like an update to me, more than necessarily event. But I guess you might not want to kind of couch it in terms of an update. You might want to say launch 1 scrub, or launch 1 succeeded. So we'll have a look at that. I think I'll have to do some research and start to plan what we can do. Blast off could be an event. Yes, right. It's a successful liftoff. But yeah, we can see what we can do. So I think what we'll probably do is just get rid of that whisper and just use that SSML as an example of that. Okay, so the other thing we can do with our, I'll just switch off Alexa. What we can do with our builder is create these cards. So the cards are graphical output or textual output, which you've got. Now I keep forgetting what the name of the device is. There's an Echo Spot, and there's another Echo something beginning with S, and they have screens. And of course, if you've got the Alexa app on your phone or an Alexa app on your tablet, then you can get, and on your computer, then you can get text information as well. So, for example, if you say to Alexa, play the album "Life on Mars" by David Bowie, then it will play that, but also on the card, on the Echo Spot, or on the app, it will have some text that says you played that. It maybe have an image or whatever. Yes, it's a good album. I went to. I'm a big fan of prog rock from the 70s, and one of my wife's heroes is Rick Wakeman, and he actually did a lot of the piano work on Life on Mars. And we went to see Rick Wakeman a couple of years back, where he played all that, and then they did the entirety of Journey to the Centre of the Earth. If you're familiar with Rick Wakeman, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're not, just skim over it. I know being a prog rock fan is not really in vogue these days, but that's what I grew up with, really. You're a fan. Fan of prog rock or of Rick Wakeman? Or of David Bowie, Gareth? Okay, so let's look at these cards. So there's several kind of cards. All three, excellent, Gareth. I'm impressed. So what's your favourite prog rock band, Gareth? I know who my favourite is by a long chalk, but well, I've got a couple of favourites, but a big favourite and then a second favourite. who might not always be. Well, no, I'm talking now. If I think about it now, I'm getting to kind of three in my mind. One of which may not be kind of considered to be prog rock. Okay, simple card then has two properties. It has a title and some content, and then we have a standard card which has a title, some text, and possibly an image. Pink Floyd, yes. So Pink Floyd is the one that I probably would say you might not consider to be prog rock. I'm not sure what you'd call early Pink Floyd. We listen to Pink Floyd all the time in the car, so we've got Echoes at the moment, and it plays continuously on a loop basically in our car. My favourite group is Yes, by a long chalk. They were really the first album I ever bought was a Yes album, and I was hooked from the moment I heard it. Rush, I do like Rush. I like 2112, Hemispheres, and what's the other one? The King's one. I do like that trilogy of albums. Although Geddy Lee's voice can, as my ears now, as they're kind of aging, find it more and more difficult to cope with Geddy Lee's voice. But Genesis, I'm a big fan of Genesis. Yes, love that. Copy The Wall in pink vinyl. Yeah, I'm in two minds about The Wall as a concept album. Comfortably Numb is a really great track. The actual Brick in the Wall as a piece of music, it's okay. It's just the sentiments behind the. Now I understand that Roger Waters, I think it's Roger Waters, who he had a tough time at school. I just don't kind of buy into the "we don't need no education" kind of message of that particular track, or those couple of tracks. But yes, "Wish You Were Here" is my favourite Pink Floyd, and then "Dark Side of the Moon." Actually, our all-time favourite Pink Floyd track is actually off the Division Bell, which is a track called "High Hopes," and that is wonderful. Completely out of character for the rest of the Division Bell album, but yeah, I really like that. But "Wish You Were Here" is probably, as an album, as an entire album, is my favourite, and then would be "Learning to Fly." Yeah, good one. So Gareth, we've got so much in common. Wonderful. Okay, let's look at these cards. So let's just create a couple of response builders for creating cards. So we're going to write card. Write simple card. Write simple card. So this simple card has a title, and it has some text. Now I think we should end session should be true for cards. I should think so. We want to now create a new simple card, and this is going to have title and text going into it. So let's look at the simple card. So we want to have a constructor on this. Public simple card. Taking the title and text, and we'll just set title for title and content. The text. So it'd be interesting to see if we can test cards out. Let's just get rid of those things. And then standard card, what we'll do is you'll just copy this. and string image URL. Just give it a default value, so we don't have to provide an image. So card, what's it called? Image. So image is equal to new card image, string image URL. So I'm going to say if image URL is not, so if not string dot is another white space image URL, we'll create the image part, otherwise we won't bother. So card image, now we need a constructor on that. Oh, it's got a small and a large, it's got two properties. Okay, we need to take care of that. Okay, so okay, constructor again. Small image URL, large image URL. Let's take care of that. Yep, and large. So we make this a bit clever at some point, but let's just take those properties in. Okay. And where we get standard card. So image, we'll better change this to large, small, image URL. Small image URL. What's he complaining about now? Simple card. Method must have a return type. It's not a method, it's a constructor. What have I done wrong? Let's have multiple constructors, shall we? We'll just have that for now. Oh, it's a standard card, that's why. Okay. And we'll have a string small image URL and string large image URL. And what was it? It was image, a new card image. And that was small image URL, large image URL. Okay. Right. So that's simple card and standard card. Let's create a simple card. So let's close some of these down. Text output, response type, size speech, response body. We don't need that. Response builder. So write simple card, response builder. So response body, response.card, is it? Yeah, there we go. So write a simple card and we'll write a standard card. So standard card. We'll have another one of those. The additional parameters in. So the small. Large image URL. Okay, and we'll just pass those in. Okay, so we've now got the ability to create cards. So let's have a play and see if we can create a card and see what happens. So on our intent request handler, when we get who is live, we're currently saying Codebase Alpha is streaming now. So let's add onto that a card, write a simple card, and the title will be streaming now, and the text will be Codebase Alpha. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to test this using the test suite that's in the Alexa skill test, but we'll find out. Let's go over, let's publish that. Do a build, make sure everything's happy. And we'll publish that to Azure. So you're streaming tomorrow, Gareth? Is that the plan? What about you, Rambling Geek? Is it if you're still on the if you're still viewing, is Friday your next planned stream as well? After work, Gareth. Okay, that's great. I should be able to tune in for some of that, even if I have to do some lurking. So my next stream is going to be on Wednesday. It'll be early stream, 4 o'clock UTC, and I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do yet. We may start to look at some dialogue. So one of the things I want to look at is being able to ask for streamers who stream content people want to listen to. So, for example, you might say who's streaming JavaScript, or who's streaming JavaScript and C# and .NET Core. And I'm not sure how many ands to allow. But what we need to do is to, if people say and, if they say JavaScript and, then we need to have Alexa respond. You know, you need to say, you said and, what else do you want the streamer to be? I can't really phrase it, express what I'm trying to say, but we want it to be able to say you haven't filled all the available slots. Could you re-prompt them for slots? Yes, the first time we're not going to, we might not, but I do want to play around with that because it does give us the opportunity to use the dialogues where we ask people to confirm slot values. Something we're not doing and something we do need to do. What we're doing at the moment is very programmatic, but a lot of the cleverness in the skills is designing your interactions, and that's where the difficulty is, because that's like almost, it's not art, I don't suppose, but it's almost like an art, isn't it? It's not like programming, it's designing something to do with humans and how you interact with a human, which is a bit like a UI, and I'm not a UI person, so it's going to be interesting to look at that. That's published. I believe I published that. Let's go to the console, and here's the Alexa simulator. So we can try Alexa. I'll type it in rather than reading it out. Ask live coding who is streaming right now. It's not come back with anything. So I think we're going to have to. We probably made a mistake. It's coming up with no content. Let's try the echo. Alexa, ask live coding who is streaming right now. Interesting that it's thinking hard about this, isn't it? Suggests there's an error somewhere. Alexa, ask...
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding right now.
Let's have a look at the
Please
logs.
try a little later.
Alexa, ask...
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding right now. Please try a little later.
Alexa?
Sorry,
So it's not happy.
right now. Please try a little later.
So it doesn't really sound like it's my skill that's causing that problem. Let's just publish it again and just see what happens, because it sounds. I only managed to get the Alexa invocation in before it fails. So let's make sure our service has been published. Yes. Oh, service isn't available. Oh no, there we go. Value 1, value 2. So that proves our code is pushed up. Let's try once more with the echo. Alexa, ask live coding who is streaming now. We're not logging anything either, are we? Alexa, ask live coding who is streaming now. Alexa, ask live coding who is streaming now. So we're getting just a general failure. Let's just see if it is the code I've added by just commenting out. So write simple card, we'll get rid of that. As to why it should be a problem. Who is live response handler? That's okay. Response builder. So we're adding a new response body. Oh, I can see what's going on here. Okay, so we need to do some more clever stuff here, don't we? So yeah, so this is where we've run into one of the issues with the builder pattern is you have to start building some intelligence into it, which is good because it means that the whole point of using the builder pattern is to abstract away the complexities of the underlying data structure from the user. So what we'll say is if response is null, and then we'll create a new response body, otherwise we won't. We'll just, because we're dealing with non-dialogue situations, we can just pop this on every one of them. Okay. So I like to have a space after a black line after an if statement, so I'm going to just put those in. And there was one up here. Okay, so let's build that and try that. Yeah, okay, let's publish. Nothing more civilized than listening to a stream with a nice glass of red wine. And so I've decided to stream, at least on the late stream, with a nice glass of red wine as well. Okay, here we go. It's publishing. Published. Okay. Let's close those down. Have a look over here. Yeah, we got it. So let's try again. Alexa, ask live coding, who is streaming now?
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
Okay, so we got that. So let's go back to our test. And we'll try that again and see if we get some content.
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
So did you hear it say? It did say Codebase Alpha is streaming now, and you can see the response that's in blue there. And so the JSON output has the speech part that doesn't have the card. You heard this, good. I'm not sure what when we use the test console here, what you can hear of the response, but you can see it visually at least. So if we look over here on the JSON output, we returned our plain text speech of Codebase Alpha is streaming now, but we didn't return the card. So what have we done wrong? So we should be able to add the text, which adds the speech, and at the same time also add. So let's see. So what we need to do is to actually output what that value is when we've created it. So so we log information. So what can we log here? Response dot so that's an Alexa response. Alexa response. Okay. I don't think that's going to be that useful to us, is it? We need to be able to turn that into JSON. So let's JSON response equals response JSON convert, is it? Dot serialize. Let's just bring that in for now. Serialize object response. Okay, let's publish that and see what we're actually writing out, because it looks like we might not be building our object correctly. And this is, we get this right now, then that'll be set us up for the when we add some more complicated logic to the builder. This is one of the problems about having to work on Azure. We can't actually have the Alexa skill kit. We can't have it kind of connect to our PC locally to do that, to do the testing. So it's all old-fashioned debugging of print statements, basically. Okay. So we pretty much know that's what is coming. This that's highlighted on the screen here is what the JSON output was, but let's see what we can see on our console.
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
Right, so we get the response. Okay. Well, it's timed out. We need to go and refresh it. Okay, let's try that again. So the testing
Codebase
tools,
Alpha is streaming now.
testing tools we get with the Alexa Skill Kit are quite good, but they are limited. I don't believe this this test console will deal with dialogues. That's the last thing I heard about it anyway. Maybe that it does these days, but I pretty much understand that it doesn't. Oh, there we look. We've got the card down the bottom here. I didn't even notice it was off the bottom of the screen. Streaming our Codebase Alpha. So that worked. Let's have a look at the logs to see if it did print out any information we're interested in. Come on, clear. Diagnostic logs. Alexa, ask live coding. Who is streaming now?
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
So we're not getting any interesting logs, are we? I do find it a bit frustrating, this this logging. It does seem to take a while. Alexa, ask live coding. Who is streaming now?
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
So we've suddenly decided it's not going to log anything for us. But I think we can be reasonably happy that from the tests here. So let's just go over here and then back to the test. So we've got a clear screen. So nothing on the hub. Medium hub, small hub, large hub. Ah, these are the devices. So, oh, TVs, let's do a small hub. Yeah, that's fine. Just reset the session. Paste. Interesting, it says session there, so it may well be that
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
error device object not provided value template. Okay, let's try going to the medium hub again. Put that request in again.
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
So we're getting an error down the bottom here. I don't know if you can see. Actually, it's behind my head. So this it's saying error retrieving device rendering. The object provided is not a valid template, which is interesting because
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
it did have that output there, didn't it? When we just looked. Let's try once more.
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
No, so it doesn't like. It says the object provided is not a valid template. I'm not sure what that means. Let's try with the echo. Alexa, ask live coding. Who is streaming now?
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
So we get that. I think this is going to be one of those things where we have to do a little bit of reading about. Oh, I've commented out the right card, that's why. Let's put the right card back in, publish that. Sorry about this, chaps. I'm obviously losing track of what I've done. So yeah, I've commented out the card writing So let's write the card again. We did see some output, so I'm pleased that we can actually test that part. So we'll get some images and things on there at some point as well. Okay, so we should be published. Let's go back over to the skill kit and we'll try once more.
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
Okay, so we didn't get the error this time, and we did get a nice output. Let's try it on a small hub. See what that looks like. So it says it's not supported, so it may be that we can't test.
Codebase Alpha
Oh, there it does.
is streaming now.
So that, I think that template you see there is what the Echo Spot looks like. So that's, I think that's an Echo Spot. Yeah. So this is the hub, Echo Hub. Okay, large hub. Let's try the large hub. We might as well try them all.
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
Okay, so on the larger devices we need to use this Alexa presentation language, which I don't really want to get involved with at this stage. I think it's sufficient to produce the cards on the smaller devices. So we'll choose the medium hub. Run it once more.
Codebase Alpha is streaming now.
So what we'll be able to do is have the card can produce a bit more information, so we can have a list of streamers who are streaming now, and maybe have what they're streaming, so we can have a bit more kind of rich information than the spoken information. And we can have, you know, graphics on here if we need to, so we could have people's logos if we could access them. So I think I want to come to a close very shortly, but one thing before we go, I want to pop over to certification. So the certification tab basically tells us what we need to do in order to prepare for certification by Amazon. So a large part of the work we've been doing over the past several weeks now is building up that library, which is going to be a NuGet package, and we'll publish it onto NuGet. Building that library up to take away any concern that the user of the library has about what the certification requirements are. So there's a technical certification, so you know, making sure the skill is intended for the endpoint, and making sure that it's not a replay attack, making sure that the certificate that was signed is a valid one and is one that came from Amazon, etc. There's also these other certification requirements, which are basically about filling in instructions. So we've got, you can see here, required fixes. 11 fixes are required. We need to put some testing instructions in. We need to put some icons in, detailed descriptions, some example phrases, and things like that. So what I'd like to do is to go over to the distribution tab, and you can see we've got two languages enabled. I'm using the UK version. We've got a US English version as well, which we'll need to get one of our US colleagues to help us test at some point. So I need to fill in some of this information. The one sentence description is: find out when live coding streams on Twitch are scheduled to go live or are live right now. So the problem with that, it says Twitch. Well, I'll leave it at the moment, because I think the idea is that DevStreams will cover multiple streaming platforms, but we'll worry about that later. But we've got some icons here. We've got to put some example phrases in. So we can put some example phrases. So the skill detail card will show the example phrases. So ask live coding who is streaming now. So we'll have that as one example. and we can, oops, what's it say? Didn't like something then. Didn't it not like that semicolon, that question mark? I think it was the question mark. Yeah, let's put the question mark in for us. Let's put that same one in for the US English one. So it looks like it's actually copying them across, so we haven't got to put separate ones in. So what I'd like to do is to put some icons in. So I went on to Fiverr and had a couple of icons made for our Alexa skill. They're very simple things. They didn't cost very much, so if we need to have them redone, we can have them redone. But let's upload what we've got, because they're perfectly reasonable for what we need for. So let's see if we can upload. There we go. That's that one, and a large one. There we go. So that's our icons. Now I'll just show you what they look like. So it's basically the name of the skill, and then there's this kind of impression of coding going on in the background. So that's what the icons look like, and these are the way they appear when they're visible on the website. So let's put the skill icons across for US as well, and the large one. There we go, and save. And if we now go across the certification tab, we should get average. So we've fixed 4 of the issues. So we still need to come up with a detailed description. So I'll work on that off stream. So example phrase must start with Alexa wake word. So let's go and fix that up. Let's just switch Alexa off here. She just woke up. So I should say Alexa. So I should about knock a couple more off the list of things to do. There's the US one and the UK one. Here's this Alexa. Okay. And certification. Yeah, it's down to 5 fixes now. So just some testing instructions, which are basically for the Amazon people to test our skill with. Detailed description, and oh, it's interesting. The example phrase must start with Alexa wake word. Oh, thought we'd done that bit. We might reduce this even more. So that's the UK one. That's the US one. Alexa. Oh, Alexa. There we go. Alexa. The certification again. There we go. Just 3 things left now. So we need to put the detailed description in, which I'll kind of work on off stream. Something a bit punchy to describe what we're trying to do. And also we need to put some testing instructions in for the Amazon people. And then we've got some functional testing to do. So there's some automated checks that we can run here, and then we can submit. But we don't want to do this until we're actually on the DevStreams site. So we want to be certifying on DevStreams and not on this this test website that we've built. Okay, so I think we've gone far enough for this evening. That's a 2.5 hour stream, so that's a reasonable length of time. What I'll do now is I'll just push this all up to GitHub. So episode 9. commit that and then sync it. So that's all. That will all be up on GitHub in the next few seconds. So feel free to go and look at that. Join me on Discord. I'll just post the Discord link into chat. So that's my Discord. There's already a bunch of people there talking about code or about rockets. So talking about rockets, let's just look at our launches command. Notable one here is April the 7th. SpaceX Falcon Heavy is due to launch the Arabsat. That should be spectacular. So that will involve the two side boosters returning to Cape Canaveral and landing simultaneously side by side on their landing pads, and also the central booster, which will actually fly 900 miles downrange and probably crash, but hopefully land on the drone ship, and that'll be I think either the furthest or one of the furthest downrange landings that they've attempted at SpaceX. So that booster is going to be coming in hot, so that should be fun. I mean, I imagine it's going to crash, but wouldn't it be great if it didn't? So that'll be a fully reusable Falcon launch, and with the exciting kind of prospect that it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that the Falcon Heavy could launch the Orion capsule to the moon in 2020. Recent developments on the Space Launch System that NASA's developing, or has got Boeing developing for them, the kind of budget that came out from the White House and is due to go to Congress could indicate that the SLS might be all but dead. And I think the head of NASA has indicated that they are looking for commercial partners to fly Exploration Mission 1, which is to around the moon in 2020. And I think it would be fantastic if the Falcon Heavy was involved in that. You probably can tell I'm a SpaceX fanboy. I just think it's astonishing watching those boosters land. Other important things on that list there, we've got another Falcon Heavy launch, which is for the United States Air Force, and that is currently, it looks like it's in May, or no, June. That's at STP2. That's June. That could move. And also, one of particular interest to me is the May 15th scheduled launch of Starlink. So this is SpaceX's satellite broadband constellation, the first part of that. So a very ambitious project to bring broadband globally to places which currently can't receive it. So that's interesting. If you're keeping up with news about the Big Falcon rocket, or Starship as it's now called, then I can tell you that Elon Musk tweeted yesterday that the Starship Hopper, the little kind of test vehicle, which is currently being built at their Boca Chica site in Texas, that could well lift off the ground by a couple of meters sometime very shortly, this week even, and they're already building the suborbital test vehicle, and you can see that being built as people fly drones around the SpaceX site down at Boca Chica, and you can see them building these shiny stainless steel body parts of the suborbital Starship. So exciting times. They're not going to put a nose cone on the hopper. That's just going to be as it is now. If you go and look at on the Discord, there's some photographs of that. But the actual suborbital vehicle will be a full height, a massive vehicle, 9 meters in diameter and very, very tall. Shiny stainless steel, like something out of Buck Rogers. So there's that to look forward to. If you haven't followed me on Twitter, I'll just post the Twitter link in, so it's at Codebase Alpha. Please do so. Also, if you haven't followed the stream, please do that as well. It's the best way of getting information about when I stream. It also helps with kind of morale this end, because obviously building up the kind of the followership and the viewership is what we're trying to do, and try to kind of make this stream a service back to the developer community. It's very important to me that at this stage in my career I do want to be giving something back, and it's this stream which was I must admit, it took quite a lot of, I'm sure Gareth would agree if he's still on, that it takes quite a lot of guts to actually decide to do streams and put yourself in front of the camera. So I've kind of tried to do that, and I'm hoping that you are enjoying the streams and that the content is useful to you. Also, I archive all the shows to YouTube. It'd be great if you could pop across to YouTube, the channel on that link there, it's in chat, and subscribe. That would be fantastic. We do get, yes, it does take a lot of guts to stream Ancient Code. Do you stream at the moment? I don't know, but it's an interesting experience for me, because I've never been particularly a public speaker, but I listen back to my videos. I don't shut up, do I? I keep on going. So thank you, Ancient Coder. It's very kind of you to say that. Yeah, so I'm going to wrap up. So I've not really done raids before, so I'm going to just pop across and see if anyone else is coding, which they may or not be, and see if we can raid them. So it doesn't look like anyone's on, does it? So has anyone got any suggestions? Adron Hall's on, is he? I haven't got him on my list. Okay, let's try. So this is the first time I've tried this. So we go over here, and we want to raid Adron Hall, and press the raid button. Is that all we do? There we go. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on Wednesday.